Keyshawn Hall leaves UCF and he signs with the Auburn Tigers.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into this special crossover edition of Locked On Auburn and Locked On UCF. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, host of Locked On Auburn. He's your host, Mike G, host of Locked On UCF. And Mike G, Keyshawn Hall entered the portal as soon as UCF season came to an end. Keyshawn Hall led the Big 12 in points scored per game, a dynamic player. And we learned Wednesday night with news broke from several different sources that his next stop, as he's made several at this point, his next stop is with the Auburn Tigers.
I love this for Auburn. I hate this for UCF, but there's a story here, Zach. Look, Johnny Dawkins, head coach of UCF basketball, allowed players that entered the portal to participate in the Crown basketball tournament. Now, if you don't know what the Crown is, it's Fox's inaugural tournament where you can win NIL money, Zach.
Right.
I love this idea. There are a lot of people who hated it. They said, oh, well, it's rewarding mediocrity. No. In today's college basketball, it's all about, if it's going to be all about the money, let's just stop pretending like it's not all about the money. And a couple of players, Tyler Hendricks and Nivs Mahovsky, decided that they were going to participate. Now, UCF won their first game. They play again today at 7 Eastern. They play Cincinnati. But Keyshawn Hall was one of the players that opted out. And, my good friend Andrew Glucko from The Last Word on Sports, we talked about this. We said, what does this mean that he opted out, but these other players are opting in? Well, the rumors were that Hall was getting NIL offers upwards of $2 million in the portal. Now, I don't know that Auburn paid that, but certainly the Big 12's leading scorer was going to garner a lot of interest on the portal market. And look, you lose Janai Broome next year. Picking up a guy who averaged 18.8 and 7 definitely helps fill the void. And Zach, I'll tell you this, the Big 12 was the second best basketball conference in college basketball last year. And I don't think it's particularly close. ACC was awful, and it wasn't the Big 10. It was the Big 12. They were the second best, and you got the best score from that conference, man. Come on. What a haul for Bruce Pearl.
So let's talk about the situation that Hall left behind, because like you said, it wasn't like he wasn't unsuccessful at UCF, led the Big 12 in points scored per game. But UCF, didn't make the tournament. As you said, they were doing invited to the NIL tournament, which I do think it's a cool addition. Where was the shortcoming with UCF? Like, could Keyshawn Hall have done more to carry this team? Was it a roster situation? Was it a coaching situation? Was it a UCF still kind of getting its feet set from entering the Big 12 a few years ago? That's going to take time. Where was the shortcoming, and how much of it was on Keyshawn?
Thank you so much for asking me this question. First of all, I love this question.
You're welcome. Thanks for answering
it. Of having covered both these teams, and the dichotomy between Auburn and UCF could not be more vast. Right now, today I'm headed out to San Antonio, as you know, to cover Auburn in the Final Four. But let me tell you this, Zach. The strength of this Auburn team is depth. They are deep, and they can throw a bunch of guys at you. You never know who's going to go for 20, 30 points, right? The weakness of this UCF team was literally zero bench. They had no bench. At the one, they were just as good as anybody in college basketball at times. If you look at the games that they lost, right? They played Kansas to an overtime game and a 4-point loss twice. Right. They had number 1 seed Houston on the ropes. They lost that game by a point. This team was so close to logging so many quality quad 1 wins that it was actually sad that they came up short. They lost 69-68 to Houston, right? They lost 91-87 to Kansas. And then they went to overtime and just ran out of gas. Look, Keyshawn Hall was averaged just over 33 minutes per game, And they were gassed, Zach. There were whole games they didn't get 5 points from the bench.
That's crazy to think about.
That is the downfall of this UCF team. So if you're a Hall, you're leaving UCF and you're going to a system where you now see proof of concept. You know that although your minutes will most definitely be cut on average, he's not going to average 34 minutes on Bruce Pearl's squad, but we know that about Bruce. He rotates a bunch of guys. You can still score 20 points per game if you're that dude. Right. And I think that Keyshawn Hall has a great opportunity. I think he's going to a system where he actually will be a more effective scorer, not having to carry the scoring load night in and night out like he did at UCF. It was Keyshawn Hall or bust so many nights. But he had guys in that one deep in the starting five that could score. He was clearly the best scorer on the team. And, if he had an off night, UCF had no chance of recovering. So when you look at the record, it doesn't look great. But if you watch the games, if you follow UCF, this
they were close. They were close a lot.
They wanted to put them in the big dance so bad, and they just kept losing games they were supposed to win due to lack of depth, man. Johnny Dawkins has to rebuild this squad, Zach, through the portal.
Well, this seems like a big deal. Like losing Keyshawn seems like a huge deal for Dawkins.
Yeah.
I mean, has there been any what's the fan base reaction to Keyshawn leaving?
Right now, not unexpected. Everybody expected this. So nobody's really pining over it because they knew this was happening. He was like that. Now look, he's only fourth school in 4 years. He's a journeyman. Just give him the backpack. He is a basketball hobo, man, but he can play basketball.
Sure.
And so there was going to be a rebuild at UCF no matter what. Keyshawn Hall wasn't going to be the guy you were going to rebuild with. So they're going to have to take whatever percentage of that $18 million cap they're going to have, and they're going to have to go to the portal and find multiple guys to help fill the role that Keyshawn Hall leaves. But if you can get some of the other key pieces to withdraw their name from the portal and those guys develop, and then you can spend your money on a bench, man. I'm telling you, the issue was the bench. Right, Debo Coleman,
I mean, especially in the Big 12. If UCF had not gone, P4 or whatever, I think that's a different conversation. But now that they're in the Big 12, you gotta have 7 or 8 guys you feel confident in. So 100%. Maybe it helps UCF that they can use that NIL allocation that maybe they had for Hall and get more role players. Maybe that helps them. We'll see. You made an interesting comment about Hall's NIL evaluation. Let's jump into that in just a moment, right here on the special crossover edition of Locked On Auburn and Locked On UCF. Today's show brought to you by our friends at 5 Hour Energy. Mike G, can you imagine being tired and not taking a 5 Hour Energy, maybe in that rough part of your afternoon where you start to slump a little bit?
I'm about to drive to San Antonio, Zach. I'm about to pop many 5 Hour Energies.
You're driving there?
Driving there.
Goodness gracious. Wow. Yeah. So Mike G needs the 5 Hour Energy. You need the 5 Hour Energy. It gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. You can head to 5hourenergy.com. So number 5hourenergy.com. You can find over 15 flavors to choose from. Watermelon, blue raspberry, peach, mango. They got it all. You can also build your own 12 and 24 packs. And of course, those are delivered right to your door. Or if you need one now, like Mike G, about to drive 20 hours, grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized. Shout out 5 Hour Energy. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn and Locked On UCF your first listens every single day. You talked about the market for Keyshawn Hall. You said upwards to $2 million. I'd be surprised if Auburn paid him $2 million, but we'll see. We'll certainly see, and maybe a number will come out. Maybe it won't. I don't know. But he made he talked to John Rothstein, and Rothstein put out a tweet right after he talked to Keyshawn Hall. He said, hey, Keyshawn Hall is telling me he's committing to Auburn, one of the several folks to break it. And then he had a quote, and it's Keyshawn saying, hey, I wanted to play for the best coach in America, and that's Bruce Pearl. And I just wonder, I wonder how much of it is I wanted, whoever's going to pay me the most versus how much of it is like I do want to play for a guy like Bruce Pearl, who, I mean, no offense to UCF, but like I think Bruce Pearl's a top 3 coach in America right now. I wonder how much cachet that carries in the transfer portal.
I think it carries a ton, but to answer your question, I think it's both. I think it was
Probably,
he was gonna get the money. He was going to get the money. So if you're going to get the money anyway, why not go play for the best coach in the country or the hottest coach in the country right now? I think he has a chance to fit what Bruce Pearl wants to do really well. You just have to buy in to the plan, right? And look, if he wants more minutes and he proves that he is capable of shouldering that load at Auburn in the SEC, he'll get that. We've seen Janai play up 36, 37, 38 minutes. Right.
Yeah. You've seen it with you've seen it with Wings too, which is going to be similar to what he's doing. You've seen it with Denver. You've seen it with Chad. You've seen it in certain games with Miles. So yeah, no question about it. Mike, what do you think he is? So in some of the reports that we saw come out Wednesday night, breaking the news, some folks refer to him as a small forward, a 3, and some folks refer to him as a 2, a shooting guard. And I mean, in today's college basketball, there's not a major difference. The difference is more defensively, and he's larger. And so he's probably going to be asked to defend 3s more than 2s on the defensive end. But based on what he did at UCF and your knowledge of the Auburn basketball program, what do you think he is at Auburn?
I think he's a 3 at Auburn. Look, man,
even with Chad assuming to be coming back next year.
Yeah, I do. Okay. I do. And look, man, he can shoot, he can rebound really, really well. Yeah. Again, you're a guy averaging almost 8 rebounds a game. In addition to those 18.8 points that he's scoring, he is, if he improves at all, that he's your walking double-double that Janai was this year. Now, Janai obviously is not a 3, right? But certainly Janai, we saw Janai add the 3-point shot to his game as well to help Auburn stretch the floor. And Keyshawn Hall doesn't have to add that; he already has that, right? I think he's a 3 in the system with Bruce Pearl, but I think he also is a guy who provides a lot of flexibility. Look at what Auburn has done this year. Being able to bounce Denver Jones from the 1 to the 2 to maybe the, you understand what I'm saying? He's got so many guys who can play the 1 through 3.
Well, especially defensively. You've got 3 or 4 guys that can guard 1 through 3, and some of them can guard 1 through 4 if you really need them to.
Yeah.
Offensively, I don't really care as much. It's, do you have the defensive personnel to lock up whoever you need to, and then also not sacrifice scoring? And it certainly seems like Keyshawn Hall, you're not going to sacrifice scoring at all. I do think he might be asked to do more defensively at Auburn than he was at UCF, just because I think culturally there's a difference there. And also you're being rotated more, so you can play harder when you're in on both sides of the floor than what he was at UCF. And that's nothing against Hall. That's nothing against UCF. It's just a different style, and it's a different approach that these coaches have. So I do think that'll be the biggest difference is, hey, how quickly can you come in here and compete for minutes? Because you're going to have to do it on the defensive side of the floor.
Yeah, Bruce Pearl is building quite a resume with NBA-type players here the last 5 years. And every Keyshawn Hall, that's still the ultimate goal. Obviously, you need a lot of NIL money, but you want to make
Thor hit a dagger last night. Did you see that?
He what?
JT Thor hit a dagger last night.
Yeah, I'm telling you, they have the Walker Kessler, Jabari Smith, the guys that they have in the league right now that have come out of Auburn. If you're Keyshawn Hall, this is a great path for you where you don't have to sacrifice your NIL, and you can develop in a system that is currently putting guys into the NBA. So, look, him committing during a Final Four weekend is such a flex for Bruce Pearl. On the UCF side, though, I have to say, again, you were going into rebuild no matter what. And this is where, teams like UCF, I think this is where you've got to catch up. Now, I got a chance to talk to multiple ADs about this NIL bucket that they're going to have coming in a couple months. and how much goes to football, how much goes to men's basketball, and then the Olympic sports after that. Well, I'm not sure how much Johnny Dawkins is going to have to work with, right? And I think that Keyshawn Hall knew that. So staying at UCF after leading the Big 12 in scoring, it wouldn't have been a smart financial decision, business, he had to go, right? And if you're UCF, what you need more team success to hold guys like Keyshawn Hall there, because once you have that success, Zach, the support for the program builds. And while there will be $18 million available, the cap is really 20.5, but 2.5 of that is going to be spent on scholarships for the Olympic sports. So it's $18 million you have left. Not every school is going to be able to even fill that bucket. Auburn is one of those schools. So if you're Keyshawn Hall, I'm going to a school that can fill that bucket, and I can get what I'm going to get. Because look, whatever he got in NIL, he's going to get in NIL from that. That's not going to be all he gets. Right. Correct. He's going to get brand deals. And I mean, he may be worth upwards of $2 million. I just don't think he's going to get that in a single go from Auburn from this new rev share thing that's happening. So, more will come on that. If you're UCF, you've got to catch up there. And I've said this, I cover women's basketball as well, too. The way college sports is going, you can't compete without money. Right. And so there was no chance UCF was going to hold on to Keyshawn Hall. Look, he did what he had to do. It's almost the equivalent of balling out on a contract year in the pros. Mm-hmm. What he did. Right. Like he balled out and then he hit the market and then he's getting his money. And, he's at the peak of his powers right now. And the only question you have is, do I fit? Right. And can I get to the next level? Because I think he's done after this. I don't think he has any more eligibility left after this. So, you got to get to the next level after this. And that makes this next year really important. So you're watching what Auburn is doing and you're thinking, I want to be a part of that potentially, especially with the pieces they have coming back. Because if you just spent a whole year having to carry a team night in and night out, and now you probably understand the necessity of having other guys that can score to free you to be able to score more freely. And
sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. Like sometimes people get better with that. I mean, just looking at Auburn's roster, like I think, I think Miles in Denver probably got better not having to carry, an entire team. But then you look at, and people forget, but like the JP Pegues addition from Furman. I mean, he was one of the hotter guards in the portal this time a year ago. It was a big deal when Auburn landed him, but the big thing was like, okay, he's a volume scorer. You're not going to have the opportunity to do that with all these guys, and it didn't work. It didn't pan out. I don't think Keyshawn Hall is a similar player as Pegues. Like I think Hall is more likely to translate than, Pegues from Furman a year ago. But mentality, like there is a mentality shift that these guys have to deal with, and not everybody deals with it the same.
I agree. Look, you're going to conform or you're not going to play, right? And that is the type of system that he's going in. Yes, 18.8 points a game. Okay, yes, okay, right. But this is not like you're going to some school where you're going to be able to just say what you want to do. No, you're coming here to do what you're told, right? That's the type of program Auburn basketball is right now. And, these guys that are on it have bought into it, and now they're in the Final Four. So if you're Keyshawn Hall, you're seeing that and you're saying it works. So why wouldn't I go and conform in that system, right? Auburn had a player that left for another school and said that Bruce Pearl sold him a bill of goods or a field of dreams or whatever he said, right? And if you're Keyshawn, but then the next year you're seeing, okay, well, maybe it wasn't that.
Well, and the team that you went to was a Final Four team. Then they add you, and then they got worse.
Yeah. Right.
It's like maybe it's me.
Maybe it's me, right? Yeah, maybe he said what he said, and I should have just bought in. And so, if you're Bruce Pearl, you're making that clear to Keyshawn Hall, and certainly, I know Bruce is on a heater right now. Like I said, on the opposite end, if you're Johnny Dawkins, you've got to build a roster that can get you over those humps, those small humps that you weren't able to get over last year. Man, I'm telling you, this team was like 2 or 3 wins away from making the tournament if they had just. Let me reframe that. UCF was like 6 points away from making the tournament. If they could have just logged through 6 points, could have got them 3 more huge quad 1 wins, and some against 1 and 2 seeds in the tournament. Man, they had a chance to really do some damage here with the opportunities. We talk about the opportunities that Auburn had for quad 1s because of the strength of the SEC. Well, UCF had those same opportunities in the Big 12 with Iowa State and Houston and Kansas, man. So I think this is a good move for both sides. You had to move on if you were Johnny Dawkins, right? You had to move on if you were Keyshawn Hall. And look, as soon as he opted out, we all knew what was happening. When he wasn't going to play in the crowd, we're like, yeah, okay, he's gone. Now, I can't say that I saw Auburn coming. I didn't see Auburn coming at all. That was a complete shock to me. That
why is that a shock, you think?
Just we had not heard any whispers of it, right? Like, of any potential.
You're not saying it's a fit or anything. No. You're just saying like you hadn't heard it. Gotcha.
Yeah. There were no people were asking, where's Hall going to land? I was like, look, man, we're not even hearing anything. I mean, his camp kept that clamped tight, and then suddenly he's an Auburn Tiger. So, good on them for keeping that so close to the vest.
But it sounds like a lot of Zoom calls happened early in the week, and I've heard a report from 2 people that some of the calls didn't go super well because like Auburn's coaching staff's been busy. They haven't been able to really they can't really prepare for a lot of these guys. They're still playing basketball. And I did hear that rubs some targets the wrong way. I don't think any of them were like their top targets they were going after. Clearly Keyshawn Hall was not one of them. And it sounds like there's 2 other big names that Auburn is heavily pursuing.
Okay.
But I mean, it seems like a lot of these calls happened Monday or Tuesday. I was reading the Keyshawn Hall story from the Kentucky perspective, and it sounds like Kentucky Zoom called with him on Monday. So it sounds like a lot of these things happened on Monday, and then for him to sign and everything be done by Wednesday, that's a little bit quicker than I thought.
Yeah,
if I'm being 100% honest with you.
Yeah, I think that's why I caught us on the UCF side by surprise, right?
Sure.
Was it, again, the brevity of the process was crazy. And so, like I said, this is, the rich will continue to get richer in college sports, man. This is the way it is. Bruce Pearl has found a way to put Auburn on top. UCF has got some catching up to do, in terms of that, but they're in a conference where they can do it now, right? And,
they can.
You've just got to overachieve for a couple years so that you can get the NIL support, fill that $18 million bucket, and then get your percentage of that pie if you're Johnny Dawkins. Now, I before we move on, I will tell you this ongoing storyline, Zach. UCF fans are really unhappy with the state of UCF sports.
Well, let's jump in that in a second. Let's jump in that in a second. Right here on this crossover edition of Locked On Auburn and Locked On UCF. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel's America's #1 sports book. And right now, if your first $5 bet hits at FanDuel, you get $200 in bonus bets. Like, $200 in bonus bets. The NCAA tournament is not over. The Auburn contingency watching this is very well aware of that. Auburn a 2.5-point dog against Florida. I'm telling folks, if you're picking Auburn, don't take the plus 2.5. Take the money line. Take the Auburn money line at plus 126. That is my suggestion throughout the week. You got Auburn or Florida?
I've got Auburn.
Yeah,
I think it's really hard to beat the same team twice. I think they're going to be prepared. I got Auburn in this one. I think this is Miles Kelly's breakout game as well, too.
Okay, I've been saying to Todd Pettiford. So I mean, they need a perimeter player to step up.
Tournament to Hod.
Tournament to Hod. Visit FanDuel.com to get in on all the college hoops action all tournament long. Yeah, the state of UCF is interesting. Final few minutes of this crossover edition of Locked On Auburn, Locked on UCF. I mean, the Gus Malzahn just kind of leaving to go be the OC at FSU. That seemed to come out of nowhere. I love the hire of bringing Scott Frost back to UCF. I think that makes a ton of sense. But folks aren't happy with the current situation of UCF athletics, huh?
Yeah, Terry Mohajir, athletic director Terry Mohajir, is under a lot of fire right now. Women's basketball is a mess. Men's basketball, obviously, Johnny Dawkins wasn't a Terry Mohajir hire, Zach. But so certainly there will be some evaluation that goes on there. I think it gets one more a year at least to try to turn it around. But right now, UCF athletics is in a very sad state, right? And it's not unfixable though. So you start with Scott Frost. It starts with football. It starts with football because for the few athletic departments in the country that are actually in the black, they're in the black because of football. Your Olympic sports don't exist without football. So it starts there. And then, where college basketball is going, right? Like, I've talked to SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey like 3 times in the last 3 weeks. Yeah. And we've talked about the direction of basketball in the conference and the investment that he asked the institutions to make, right? One of the interactions I had was him and the Big Ten commissioner next to each other, essentially just swinging together, just saying, "Hey, we run the roost." The Big 12 has to find a way to get the same sort of quality out of their sports as a whole. Like you had to expand. Like you lost Texas and Oklahoma, right? You lost your flagship, right? And I would say now, the conference is desperately in search of a true flagship athletics program.
Okay.
Right. Hear me out. Like you got some good teams, right? But as far as athletic departments are concerned, do they have anything like Texas or Oklahoma where, again, you have an opportunity to be good in multiple sports, baseball, football, basketball, women's basketball? No.
I don't know who it is. Like from a fan base size standpoint, like they may want it to be BYU, but I just don't think it's not carrying that same type of cachet.
Correct.
It's not even close.
Hear me out, Zach. Arizona State was voted to finish last in the Big 12. They won the conference, made the college football playoff, gave Texas a big run for their money in that game. It's probably one of the most entertaining games we saw.
They probably should have won it. I mean, they kind of got screwed.
And Kenny Dillingham is begging for NIL money after that. He's pleading with everybody to say, guys, if you like this season, give us money because this is not sustainable without it. He understands it. And if you're UCF, you are in the same boat. You're finding out that this winning is not sustainable against the people that you are tasked at beating without the cash. That's it, man. This is semi-pro sports that we're in. That's the era that we're in. And schools like UCF have to find a way to fill that bucket that schools like Auburn are going to feel like that. Right. On June 30th, you can no longer subscribe to the Kingdom, which is their collective, right? Auburn has On to Victory, they have the Kingdom. And they have their competitive success fund, which I hate the name, but like the idea, that you will now be able to subscribe to as a UCF fan and help with NIL. But it's not, that's such a small percentage of what they make. We all know the money's still coming from the same sources, Zach. It's the big time donors, right? That are giving the money. Now they can just give it more openly to athletes than they could before in the past. So if you're UCF, you have to find a way to do what Kenny Dillingham, you got to have that jump off season where you say, we got the right guy at the helm and we have the success that we can ride. And if we put a little money into it and give this coach some momentum, he can start building something.
I do think bringing in Frost will help that. I think he's going to have more of the personality to do that than Gus Malzahn.
100%.
Love Gus Malzahn, but the whole politician aspect of the head coaching job was not his strength. And so to me, I think it is a strength for Frost. It's just so interesting because there's different ways to go about the raising of money for NIL funds, because like you just mentioned the Dillingham and, flash in the pan, you make this college football playoff, while Hugh Freeze at Auburn has had like no on-field success whatsoever. It's been all off the field success. And then you blink and it's like all of a sudden he's going into year 3 and it's one of the best rosters Auburn's had in the last decade on paper. Now they've got to win games, but he's been able to play the off-field game of making sure everybody's aligned, making sure the money's coming in and selling this vision, not only to the recruits and the new members of his roster, but also to whether it's big money donors or maybe that second tier, that middle tier of donors. And then obviously, the folks that are contributing, $50 a month or whatever. He's done a great job at that. And he's had like no on-field success. So
right.
It's kind of interesting to see like there's different ways to navigate it.
There are. Bottom line is you need the money and you got to get it by all means necessary.
No doubt.
Because Matt Rule tried to warn everybody a couple years ago, if you want to talk to a top QB in the portal, you need $1 million. That price tag has gone up since.
It has.
Right. And now I believe a lot of the numbers we hear are overblown.
Correct.
Right. Like On3 does these like NIL valuations, which is a potential net worth in NIL. But the truth is the numbers that they're actually getting are significantly lower, but they're still pretty in totality. It's still adding up to millions and millions of dollars that you need across multiple sports.
No, you need the money for sure. Some of the reported numbers are too high, but you need the money. For sure. And like the schools aren't going to correct you because they want people thinking that you're paying them, $4 million a year when you might just be paying them $2 million or whatever. But
they need GMs, Zach. Everybody needs a GM now.
Yeah,
to manage their cap.
Some schools have done that, and some schools they haven't quite adjusted. So we'll see. We'll see how that happens across the college sports landscape. But all in all, Keyshawn Hall was a stud at UCF. We think he's going to be a stud for the Auburn Tigers. Mike G, Auburn folks know you already, but if they want more UCF coverage, where do they go?
Please go to Locked On UCF and continue to. We're following spring football, Zach. We're following the NIL situation. We'll be following Big 12 Media Days as well, too, at Locked On UCF1 on Twitter, and then follow us obviously on YouTube at Locked On UCF. Subscribe, hit that notification bell. Make sure you get all your UCF content.
Yeah. And if you guys want to hear more about Keyshawn Hall, check in on him from time to time. Locked On Auburn available in all the same places that Locked On UCF is as well. Until next time, that's Mike G with Locked On UCF. I'm Zach Blackerby with Locked On Auburn. This has been a crossover edition between Locked On Auburn and Locked On UCF, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.